Hello there and a very warm welcome to the Morning Cafe. My name is Elengare. Indeed, a beautiful morning. I hope you're enjoying yourself and you're keeping well. Let's just begin by a look at some of the stories making headlines across the local, regional and international scene. And we begin with 175 residents of Kapchelel village in Keyo North, Elgeyo Marakwet County have been left homeless after their houses were swept away by raging floods and landslides following heavy rainfall pounding the area. This comes 3 weeks after another landslide in Chesogon, Elgeyo Marakwet.
For the last 3 days, these homeless residents have been camping at Kipiegor Primary School, fearing for their health and that of their children because of the cold nights. The conditions at the school are far from being favorable. No electricity, the roof is leaking, and both children and adults have been forced to stay together.
Shida huku imeporomoka, mvua kubwa imenyesha, mashamba imeenda, mimea hakuna kwa shamba, baridi huku ni kali, malasi naye ni shida kuleta, hakuna njia, chakula naye kusafirisha hakuna njia.
The residents say they have been living in fear of being swept by landslides.
Uwezo mtoto mdogo aweza kujua ya kwamba mahali yako ni wapi. Serikali tuangazie kwa sababu kwa sasa vile tunakaa. Penye tumekaa, serikali ingekuwa ni heri wapande mahali huku kwenye tumekaa miti na sisi tupatiwe shamba kule, shamba ambao mahali iko flat penye watoto wanaweza kukaa na penye itakuwa na ustaarabu mzuri.
More than 40 children are living in this temporary evacuation center, and besides the harsh weather conditions, they also have to contend with lack of basic needs like food.
Jini tumeteseka kwa ajili ya maneno vitu vingi kama chakula, maji, hata dawa. So baridi imetuingilia kwa shule.
Shule hakuna kitu ya kuweka joto. So watoto wanaumia. Na wale watu wagonjwa tunaomba sana serikali waweze kuwashughulikia.
The rains have destroyed roads in the area, making it difficult for well-wishers to reach them.
Kitu kama hiki kuja lazima tuone lasting solution. Lazima watu waongeleshwe na wapeleke mahali kwingine. Hatari tusonge ukiwa wai kuliko usongeshwe kama umekufa.
And in Turesia village, Keyo South, more than 15 families have been rendered homeless after classrooms at Kimoloi Primary School were destroyed by heavy rains.
Tutakuwa tunaenda pale kuhakikisha kwamba kila mmoja ameenda kwa relative yake. Tayari tumechukua majina yao yote. Msaada yote ikitoka kwa serikali ama wahisani wote watapatiwa hiyo msaada wakiwa mahali wako.
Calvin Chitwa, TV47, Elgeyo Marakwet County.
Floods indeed continue to wreak havoc in the country, leaving many homeless and others dead. The Kenya Meteorological Department has said that most parts of the country will continue to experience rainfall above average. Up to now, more than 190 people have lost their lives due to the floods being experienced in different parts of the country.
The Kenya Meteorological Department has announced that in the coming 5 days, some parts of western and northern Kenya will experience exceedingly heavy rainfall.
Maeneo ambayo huenda yakashuhudia labda makali ya mvua hii nzito ni maeneo yaliyo bonde la Ufa, pia maeneo yaliyo magharibi mwa nchi na hata yaliyo katikati mwa nchi kijumulisha Nairobi na viunga vyake. Tunawaomba Wakenya kwa ujumla waendelee kuwa waangalifu zaidi.
Cabinet secretaries from different ministries have said that floods are dangerous and there's need for Kenyans in the areas experiencing heavy downpour to relocate to safer areas, despite the government making plans on relocating them.
We have an operation in Tana River and an operation in Garissa. We are not waiting for people to be swept downstream. We are moving some people using public resources, moving some people away from danger. And that level of alert will remain raised for the next week or two until we are satisfied that we are away from danger.
Some of the areas affected and most likely to get worse in the coming days include River Nzoia in Western Kenya, River Tana in the coastal region, River Sabwani, the shores of Lake Victoria, and Masinga and Takwel dams located in Mount Kenya and West Pokot respectively.
Sikiza maelekezo umepewa na serikali kuu, serikali za county, ma-county commissioners wetu na wataalamu.
On the other hand, Devolution Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa has said that the government is continuing with the distribution of relief food to the flood victims all over the country.
Serikali itaendelea kupeana msaada kwako wewe na kwa familia yako. Kwa hivyo ukielekezwa tafali nenda pale kwa hizi shule tuko tunapeleka chakula kwa familia hizi.
The Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of Government, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, has warned those who are resisting to relocate to safer grounds will be relocated forcibly.
When we tell you things as government that this is dangerous for you, your health and the rest of all of us, it's important for people to obey this. There are parts of this country where now we are going to be forced to sometimes apply a bit of force and move people out of the areas they have decided to erect. This is science. This is not fiction, and it's not even politics.
As a result of the ongoing floods, 194 people have lost their lives, while thousands of others have been left homeless. This arises when the flood victims in Budalangi along River Trans Nzoia are complaining of theft of their property, which they left behind after relocating to higher grounds. Lydia Gashomo, TV47.
Now, there's necessity to wash hands, keep social distancing, and wearing of masks in the public. This is definitely being seen as curtailing the fight against COVID-19, and is said to have driven a grade 3 pupil from Mukwa village, Bumula constituency in Bungoma County, into simplifying the hand washing process for any resident who pays them a visit. With the help of his father, Stephen Wamukota devised a hand washing machine in just 4 days, and as our reporter Micah Gongo reports, the boy is appealing to authorities in the country to support him make more hand washing machines for use in schools and hospitals.
This is James Wamukota's home in the sleepy Mukwa village, Siboti ward in Bumula constituency, where the imagination of many has been captured. Hand washing, a norm everywhere nowadays, has been eased by this simple invention that releases water and sanitizer upon stepping on it. The machine was invented a couple of weeks ago by a 7-year-old Stephen Wamukota, a grade 3 pupil at Mukwa Primary School.
Ukifinya kuna mbao inapanda juu, inasukuma kichuma ingine na inasukuma mbao ingine na inasukuma mpira unamwaga maji.
The idea was informed by President Uhuru Kenyatta's announcement concerning the outbreak of coronavirus in the country, and the people should sanitize in order to keep the virus at bay.
Wakati rais alitangaza kwamba kuna ugonjwa, hii ugonjwa inasambazwa wakati mtu anashika kitu moja hadi nyingine. Sisi tutengeneze kitu yetu yenye tunasanawa bila mtu kutumia mikono. Tuweke tu mbata yenye mtu anasafinya maji na mwakika na nyingine pia inatoa sanitizer. Nikasema sasa hiyo itawezekanaje?
And here, Wamukota saw the need to wash one's hands without touching jerrycans and sanitizers bottles. Wamukota narrates how he gathered his tools before seeking the support of his father, who was astonished by his son's aptitude altogether.
Niliona kwa TV wakitengeneza magari. Nikaambia baba, naweza tengeneza hii kitu lakini ikuwe tu ya kunawa mikono. Nilianza na nikafika mahali na nikashindwa na nikasaidiana na baba na tukamaliza.
Wamukota is not new to innovation. He has on several occasions surprised his parents with his strange ideas. His father, who repairs electronic devices, says he has always been fascinated by his son's curiosity to help with the work.
Boy has really made me proud because kitu amefanya akipata support, he can make more other things that are much more even effective than this one.
Mtu ni kitu ako na talent, akipata tu mtu mwenye anaweza msupport, wanaweza enda mbali zaidi.
Wamukota is now among innovators in the country who have helped step up the fight against COVID-19 pandemic. And the area MCA, who also doubles up as Bungoma County Assembly Deputy Speaker Wamusai Simiyu, urges for the machine to be patented in Wamukota's name. He further warns against fraudsters who may want to plagiarize his idea.
Hitaji sisi kama taifa kusimama nayo kuhakikisha kwamba uvumbuzi huu unaweza kupigiwa upato na kupewa nguvu zaidi, ili familia yake, jamii nzima iweze kupata tija ya uvumbuzi huu. Uvumbuzi huu usajiliwe kwa jina la Stephen Wamukota kama mvumbuzi wa teknolojia hii. Wale matapeli wa teknolojia ambaye huenda wakakimbia kwa haraka na kunyakua teknolojia hii kama labda uvumbuzi wao, ama kuchukua fursa ya kusema kwamba labda wao ndio wavumbuzi.
With this kind of innovation, we are looking, the boy is trying to assist us to look beyond the corona bracket, that even after corona people can still wash, and we come out with the boy has assisted us to come out with a better technology.
Meanwhile, Wamukota and his family are urging the government to support him in making more machines to be used in schools and hospitals.
Naomba gavana wa Ngamati utupe nafasi tutengeneze mingi, tuweke kwa mashule, kwa masoko na kwa hospitali.
Reporting for TV47 from the county of Bungoma, I'm Mike Kagwanga.
Well, the government has now imposed a 15-day cessation of movement in and out of the estates of Old Town Mombasa and Eastleigh, Nairobi, after the area's reported high number of COVID-19 cases in the past few weeks. On Wednesday, the country reported 47 new cases, 18 of them in Old Town and 5 cases in Eastleigh. Andrin Kilemi tells us more.
Today, we have a new high of 47 persons who have tested positive to the disease.
For the past 1 week, the areas of Old Town Mombasa and Eastleigh in Nairobi have been recording the highest number of COVID-19 cases. Now the government has directed a 15 days partial lockdown in the two areas, the directive that took effect today 7 p.m.
There shall be cessation of movement in and out of Eastleigh area of Nairobi with effect from today, the 6th of May 2020 at 7 p.m. for the next 15 days. There shall be cessation of movement in the area known as Old Town in Mombasa with effect from today, the 6th of May at 7 p.m. for the next 15 days. There will be closure of any markets, any restaurants and eateries within those two areas.
As the number of places that are under the partial lockdown increases, the areas of Old Town and Eastleigh joins Kilifi, Kwale and Mandera, where the directive has been ongoing. During the daily COVID-19 briefing, Cabinet Secretary for Health Mutahi Kagwe said 2 more patients died in the past 24 hours, with the total number of COVID-19 deaths rising from 24 to 26.
Sad note though, I want to inform you that we have lost an additional 2 persons from coronavirus disease in Mombasa, bringing the number of deceased persons to 26. But of more serious concern regarding those deceased persons is that both of them, aged 68 and 72 respectively, actually passed away at home.
In the 47 cases that have been recorded today, one of the cases came from the neighboring country, Tanzania.
In Kenyatta National Hospital, who traveled from Tanzania through Loitoktok, traveled with matatus, etc., and is now in Kenyatta National Hospital.
As the COVID-19 number increases, over 3 million cases have been reported worldwide, with over 1 million patients recovered and over 250,000 deaths. In Kenya, the number of cases now stands at 582, with 190 recoveries and 26 deaths. Andrine Kilemi, TV47.
Well, that story brings us to a short break. Remember, you can engage us through our social media platforms. That is TV47KE on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't go too far. Morning Cafe will be back shortly with much more from what is happening. Of course, regionally, internationally, and locally. A short discussion in studio with my guests. And of course, also we'll be looking at nutrition. What kind of nutrition should you be having in this pandemic? Don't go too far. Morning Cafe will be back shortly. Stay tuned.
Quail. Q-U-A-I-L. Quail.
Anorexia. A-N-O-R-E-X-I-A.
T-A-R-A-N-T-U-L-A. Tarantula.
Mtu akikuuliza mwambie nyumba yako yajificha kumbavuni.
Mama jua saa nyingine ndo sijui kwa nini wanakusikiza hizi plans zako.
Hebu because I am your mother. Yaani huyo Saida akikosea yeye ni malaumu. Lakini watu wengine wote wakikosea inakuwa ni World War 3.
You need me. In this. You need me, man. Unanihitaji. You need me.
Saida. Mimi najua pale nje Luneta.
Hao ni watoto ama ni kokoto?
Kama Saida, sio?
Uchovu wa fikra, mwili, akili.
Ozena, usichezee thamani yangu, wasikia? Mauzia lazima raundi utalipa.
The coronavirus has negatively affected the business environment not only in Kenya but also globally. We at TV47 are in support of measures taken by the government of Kenya to safeguard the public and keep livelihoods going. In this regard, we wish to appreciate the business entities that are resilient and putting on the Kenyan spirit to sustain their businesses. We wish to support your business and the measures taken to be at the forefront of championing COVID-19 awareness by giving you free advertising in our 24-hour nationwide TV station. You can advertise your business and mention measures your company is taking to mitigate the spread of the virus. This initiative is geared towards providing a platform for continuous interaction with your clients and visibility of your business. To be eligible for this free advertising on TV47, please visit www.tv47.co.ke/advertiser and fill the following details. For more inquiries, please email ads@tv47.co.ke or simply call us on 0748 205 604.
Sarma Enterprises Limited. We are your trusted and reliable supplier of quality timber products, construction material suppliers, which are river sand, ballast, building stones. Visit our website on www.sarma.co.ke. Sarma Enterprises Limited. Quality materials for quality structures.
Sarma.
Mox Limited urges all citizens to practice the set guidelines to help curb the spread of COVID-19. Please stay home as much as possible, practice social distancing measures, wash your hands, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer, and always wear a face mask while in public places. Komesha Corona. Stay home, stay safe. Mox Limited, your construction caring partner.
Welcome to the exciting world of M-Truck Solutions, your trusted provider for bulk SMSs. We also offer API integrations for all your communication and payment needs. We also provide you with tailor-made payment getaway solution to receive and disperse cash quickly, affordable and securely. Let us expand your reach and connectivity on USSD, SMS and voice today. Call us on 0723 030 030 or email hello@mtruck.limited.co.ke. For more details, visit our website www.mtrucklimited.co.ke.
A very warm welcome back to the Morning Cafe with me, Leangari. Indeed, a beautiful morning, and we hope you are keeping well. Remember, you can engage us through our social media platforms. That is TV47KE on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And of course, right now, we'll just go straight into our discussion today. Quite a cocktail of topics here we have, and I'll just introduce my guests in studio. We have Eunice Lumalas, who is an advocate. And of course, also we have Manuel Hosea, who is also an advocate. How are you doing, Eunice?
Good morning. I'm very fine.
How was traffic along the way?
Very smooth. It was easy to get here. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. And Hosea, how are you doing?
Thank you. I'm fine. Thank you for having us.
And how is quarantine taking you? Isolation? Not really a quarantine, but social distancing.
Well, I don't know. We are just complying with the government regulations, and we are hoping that normalcy will resume as soon as possible.
All right. Okay, so when we look at the topics today, we just want to begin with the governor's call for a total lockdown. I think the government is very much concerned about the kind of behavior we're seeing with Kenyans, the kind of attitude they're having at this moment in terms of, their response to the directives from the government. What are your thoughts about this, Eunice, if we can begin with you?
I have seen the call for total lockdown by the governors, but I believe that the same has to be backed by proper data and statistics. When you look at the numbers of those infected in the counties, so far we have not been shown that all the counties have people that are infected by COVID-19. And therefore there can't, in my view, be case for total lockdown in all the counties as is being requested for by the governors. I wouldn't therefore support such a call. And I think it's also confusing for the people, the Kenyans, because Kenyans are seeing a lot other more devastating disasters happening around. We are seeing a number of nearly 200 Kenyans dead, because of the raging flood. And therefore, when you're not seeing the relevant minister also communicating about updates on what the government is doing to help these people, it becomes confusing, and therefore maybe they may not take the serious risks associated with the COVID-19 pandemic as they ought to. So I think government must work on the messaging as well, and show by action that they are taking all disasters as seriously as they ought to, and that will make people, I believe, get more serious. But nonetheless, the government guidelines are out, and I think the counties must therefore focus on enforcing those guidelines first, because a total lockdown may not work well for the majority of Kenyans. We are still a third world country, I believe, and therefore we need to balance between the two. And I actually appreciate the fact that the government has been doing all it can to balance, and only therefore getting more serious with those very seriously affected areas like now Eastleigh and Old Town in Mombasa, and I think that's the way to go.
Well, Eunice, I would like to know, before we go to Hosea, why do you think, in particular, a total lockdown will not be good for the country, in terms of counties in this case? Because when we look at the kind of behavior we are having with Kenyans, I mean, the question would be, then what is the way forward? What is the right way to handle the current situation, the rising cases of COVID-19?
Honestly, we need to, in my own view, to ensure we enforce discipline. When you look at most of the developed countries, the governments are putting in measures to alleviate the situation, the lockdown, the total lockdown situations. You've seen in the US, the government issuing checks to every household, $1,200, $600. This would help you get by, pay your rent and all of that. We are not there, and we have to face our reality. Most of the people in this country are still living hand to mouth. Okay, this is the true reality on the ground, and therefore they have to go out and get a living. We need to be disciplined. We need to be disciplined, and that's why I'm not for total lockdown. I'm for partial lockdown, the way we are doing, until we have a proper measures, at least adequate measures, backed by data, from the government side. So,
let's hear from you, Hosea.
Well, yeah, I don't think whether it's enough to just say that we need a lockdown. We need a lockdown. The governors who have actually stated that they want the government to lock down the entire country have not weighed in on how that will affect the citizens of this country. As my colleague has stated, if you look at other countries, for instance, the US and other developed countries, they have put in measures to actually caution their citizens while they are looking at ways of locking down the country. So for Kenya, I think there are no statistics which have been done that can actually be relied upon to actually allow the government to lock down. For instance, the partial lockdown has affected negatively on Kenyans, especially economically. Most families do not actually cannot be able to raise a meal like they used to do when they used to work 24 hours. So I guess it's high time that we look into possible alternatives first that we can use, like for instance adhering to the Ministry of Health regulations. For instance, using masks, ensuring that we keep social distance. We work virtually from home. Those are remedies that have been proved to be effective, that have been used by other countries, that have been put in place and have actually, brought results. For Kenya, I don't think whether we are extremely prepared to have a total lockdown. As my colleague has stated, there are more devastating catastrophes that are ongoing, like the floods, which are killing more people than COVID. We have police brutality. People are dying out of police brutality, and the numbers are higher than the COVID-19. The questions Kenyans are asking themselves, which one is the greater evil? Is it locking down and ensuring that people die in their houses out of hunger? Or is it actually maintaining a partial lockdown whereby Kenyans can be able to actually find something to eat? Those are the variables that the government should look at before it considers a total lockdown. And I think it's early in the day, and we need to borrow from progressive countries and see what they are doing to ensure that they reduce the number of infections, at the same time ensuring that their citizens do not suffer from the lockdown.
Leah, if I may just add, one has to also look at the reasoning behind the calls by some of the most governors for the lockdown. You know, COVID has come with a bag of goodies. You know, there is, and we have to face it, there is money behind COVID, and that's why people are not using the same vigor to ask for assistance in terms of the other disasters happening around. So recently we had the governors for Kilifi, Mombasa, you know, the most affected areas, Kwale, asking for over 300 million to be given. I think they were given 150 million each. So could money be part of the reason that the governors are asking for this push? And I wish the minister in charge of labor would take this opportunity to carry out or to start asking those who are unemployed because of even the partial lockdown to come forward. You know, like in other countries, let's take stock of the unemployment effect and the devastating effects. A lot of people have been asked to take half pay. A lot of people have lost their jobs. Then what happens with total lockdown? You know, with no government intervention.
You know, then the question is, Eunice and Hosea, then how do we control the behavior of Kenyans? Specifically, what will be your recommendations as someone who is looking at it from a law perspective and also from just a common citizen's perspective? Let's begin with you, Hosea.
I think citizens, especially the Kenyans, have actually tried as much as they can to comply with the government directives, especially on the Ministry of Health regulations. Most of them have actually complied and stayed home. Most of them have complied. Majority of the citizens have complied and they have put on masks. They have kept social distancing. I think the government has an obligation to ensure that this happens, and those who are not able to comply are actually punished, because these regulations were legislated and they are part of Kenyan law. So I don't think whether the government should rush to make decisions in terms of locking the entire country while it has not affected the the ongoing regulations that actually are working. It's an obligation for citizens to actually comply with the rule of law and also listen to their leaders, because that is a personal obligation that every Kenyan citizen has. At the same time, there is an implication to going against those regulations. We have seen most Kenyans being taken to quarantine zones, being put into surveillance for 14 or more days because of their conduct, and I think that is working out, even though there are reports of police brutality, and there are also concerns as to whether those quarantine stations are properly equipped to actually curb the spread. Those are small issues that are rising out of trying to ensure that the government complies, but I think the government has a bigger obligation to sensitize citizens to ensure that they provide masks. We received funding from the international community for purposes of ensuring that we curb the spread of COVID-19. We haven't seen the government use those funds to, for instance, give free masks to citizens, for instance, give free sanitizing equipment to citizens. And those are the questions that the government should answer at the moment. Are they actually playing their role while the citizens are also being called upon to play their role? So everybody has a responsibility to play. The government has its own responsibility, and the citizens too have a bigger responsibility to ensure that they help the government in curbing the spread.
All right, let's just move away from the lockdown matters and just look at cases of defilement during curfew. This is something I've talked about, here on our TV station, cases of defilement being on the rise, especially during curfew hours. Eunice, have you encountered any case at all that has perhaps come to your table, maybe someone seeking help, or have you heard of any? Let's just hear from your experience on the ground.
I have not personally heard of someone coming to me in terms of complaining about defilement, but yes, there's been domestic violence, a report of that directly to me, and rape, So this is a young female under this current COVID situation, and she has undergone that, and we are still trying to work out to see how best that will be dealt with. We have seen the Chief Justice, and also in the courts, there has been an increase in the number of cases of domestic violence, and sexual or gender-based violence and sexual offenses are in the increase. This is happening. Okay, so we cannot run away from that. And why is this probably happening? A lot of those who are going through defilement, and yes, I think a day or two ago we saw a German who had been allegedly found with a younger girl. Mm-hmm. Part of the reason would be a lot of those who are going through the violence situation. We're talking about defilement, talking about people who are under 18, children basically, who are under 18. Now they are more vulnerable, particularly under these circumstances. I would give you an example of a case that we had. A young girl of 16 defiled by the stepdad, and the mother is supporting that man because he is the one that brings the food on the table, is the one that is paying for rent and everything. So when situations like we're going through, the pandemic, so to speak, is happening now, and you're finding yourself with your violator in the house, you believe, because a lot of people believe courts are locked, courts are not operating. Where do you go? And I have to say this, people have no faith in the police to resolve their disputes, and that just exacerbates the situation. Police officers had the gender desk. Very few of those gender desks are working, and I think it's important to walk around and see which of those gender desks are actually working. So a lot of people are suffering in silence now. When schools are open, at least those who are potential victims are away most of the time. They just come to sleep, and then it's at night, the father or the violator or whoever it is maybe has gone to work, and then their situation is not as dire as now. But now when you have to find yourself in the same place with someone who have probably lost their work, Okay, you know a lot of, particularly hospitality industry and others, the people have lost jobs. So you find yourself with someone who is stressed up, no way to vent, they are abusive, then the situation is really dire. And I wish we had more rescue centers. I know FIDA is doing something. I'm a member of FIDA, and they have a hotline, and they're collaborating with other organizations where people can call, but there's need for much more, which in my own view would be rescue centers.
All right.
Yes.
And I know, like, one of the cases you've just mentioned, it's one of a young girl in Bomet County. Allegedly, a 59-year-old man was found defiling her in a vehicle, and this is after curfew hours, just slightly like an hour after curfew had just begun. Hosea, when you listen to what Eunice is talking about, that at this moment what we need more is rescue centers, but other than rescue centers, when we talk about addressing this matter, getting assistance and justice for these victims, what would you say, Hosea?
First, I need to state that the Constitution was never suspended. The Sexual Offences Act was never suspended. The offences under that act are still working. Whereas the closure of schools and closure of most of the institutions has contributed to the rise of cases of defilement and all cases related to sexual offences, it's incumbent upon the government to enforce, to ensure that they put in measures. As my colleague has suggested, there need to be rescue centers at every police station or at every community. We have the Nyumba Kumi initiative, which has been helpful in security matters. It can assist actually the government in ensuring that these cases are actually captured and perpetrators are punished. Having said that, the government should also consider the aspect of, the sanity of people at home. Now that there is no work, the idleness at home, now that there is nothing that the young people are doing, there is a possibility that this idleness has contributed to these offences. But that should not be a reason why the government should not be alert. And I support what FIDA is doing to ensure that they actually map out and see the areas that have been affected by where victims have come out. And there are so many people. Remember, defilement matters. Most young people fear coming out, especially when the defilers are their guardians or their parents. And so there is need to sensitize in whatever ways from a community level to ensure that these cases are reported and punished. Whereas there is an excuse that courts are closed. That shouldn't be a reason for any citizen to actually take the law into their own hands. The courts also need to put in measures, ensure that we can have mobile courts. We have done it before in communities where these cases are, so that the victims can be punished. That can serve as an example to the rest of the Kenyans, of the Kenyans who have been involved in these atrocious activity. And as such, I think it's prudent that we have vigilance from the government side, and also from the civil society, and also from the citizens themselves. We need to be our neighbors' keepers by ensuring that whatever happens in the neighborhood or any crime of that sort happens within our spaces of living are reported.
All right, and Eunice, looking at especially some of the statistics that I recently got even to read from the Gender Violence Recovery Center, you notice that most of the victims are children, and children in this case girls. And like I think Hosea has mentioned, the fact that most of them are choosing to be quiet. So Eunice, what will be your view, especially for mothers who have children who have been defiled? What would you tell them in terms of making sure that these children are protected and these children do actually get some bit of assistance, especially psychologically?
Basically, Leah, even before COVID and this current situation, a lot of defilement happens in silence. So now it's only worse. So I'd like to let all the women know that these children are our future and they are being damaged in a big way. Some of them may never recover and attain their full potential. So women must not suffer in silence. There is help out there and they must come out. I was hoping that particularly now there can be an initiative by some corporates who can come together with the organizations offering counseling services, you know, and psychiatric help to reach out and offer free services, you know, and listen to these young children and counsel them. I hope it's still possible. I know a champion of mental health, and she's trying to come up with a system where corporates can support free counseling services during this time and free and accessible services across the counties, and I hope that will work. But that's just to tell mothers, do not be afraid. Speak out, neighbors, speak out. It's for the future of these children, and we have a responsibility to ensure that every girl, every child attains their highest possible potential. It's not possible if they are being suppressed in that way. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
And if we can just look at another story here, Nigeria's death penalty by Zoom. This story basically about a lady who was caught peddling drugs in Saudi Arabia, and recently she was taken to court via Zoom, and now she's been sentenced to death. So basically Amnesty International feels this is an act of violence. Hosea, what are your thoughts about this story?
I think it's unfortunate considering that the world over death penalty has been eradicated, or it's being eradicated because it's an affront on the basic human rights. The Rome Statute, international conventions on human rights have actually stated that death by hanging or by any form of killing is wrong and it's against the human rights. For instance, in Kenya, we still have the death penalty, and since 1987, when the last person was hanged, I believe Hezekiah Ochuka, for treason, there has never been any death by hanging in Kenya or by any means since then, even though courts up to date still sentence people to death. There has been no legislation to actually eradicate it completely from our penal code. I think it's unfortunate, and I agree with the human rights organizations as to the atrocities that happened in Nigeria. As a country, Nigeria has not actually scrapped up the death penalty from its statutes, and so the law has not changed per se. Considering other African countries, majority of them have actually scrapped off death penalty from their statutes. So it's a concern, and it's a growing concern, and I believe the international community, human rights organizations have a responsibility to reach out to the Nigerian government and actually bring up legislation to remove the death penalty from their statutes. And so there are several countries, including the US, where the death penalty still is enforced. It's an ongoing fight, and I believe soon enough we'll have every country adopt those international regulations and respect to human rights.
Right. Well, Eunice, Amnesty International is saying that drug offenses do not fall under the most serious offenses. That is internationally, and they should not be punished by death. But individuals facing murder, treason, and terrorism may face death. What are your thoughts about this? Because this is what the Amnesty International is actually perceiving of this particular case, that maybe the sentence is too harsh.
I'm among the few who still support death penalty. And while I support, and I believe if you take someone's life, if you're a terrorist and you're out to just destroy, there is no reason why your life shouldn't be taken. So I am one of those who are in the minority, I guess, who still believe in death penalty, and I hope in Kenya the case that is at the Supreme Court will not succeed, so that we continue with death penalty, but for offences that deserve death penalty, like murder and terrorism. Okay, so in terms of what the Transparency International are arguing in Nigeria, I truly support that the lady, in terms of the sentencing. First of all, there's nothing wrong with sentencing via Zoom, because Lagos State, where this happened, has a high number of those infected by COVID, and it's happening here. We are having, actually courts are operational, so people must know that courts are working, it's just that not at the same scale. But the fact that it is drug related, I have a problem with that, because you have to dig deeper, So I think all organizations, everyone concerned, must put pressure to ensure this lady is not executed for that offense. I support TI, and I think pressure must come from everywhere, even Kenya. If we can and support that, I support them that the most serious offenses deserve death penalty, but not what the girl was facing, drug peddling.
Well, in the recent past, Jose and Eunice, I know Saudi Arabia has been linked to cases of maybe foreigners who are being mistreated. And I think also the Amnesty International has mentioned that some of these cases linked to Nigerians, and maybe perhaps other foreigners in this case, are usually shrouded in secrecy. So what does that tell us in terms of the stay of foreigners in Saudi Arabia, Jose?
I think Saudi Arabia has been notorious in human rights violations internationally. It's one of the countries that most foreigners have received the worst treatment, and we have seen people migrating there, but some of them being subjected to extremely difficult situations, some of them losing their lives, some of them being mistreated, whipped. It has recorded the highest number of human rights violations, and this is because of their legislations and them not being a party to international treaties that respect the human rights. They are prone to actually violating these human rights. I think it's, as my colleague has stated, the best remedy is to put pressure. If it were that it was an African country, I believe the international community could have put greatest sanctions against the country to persuade it to actually stop these human rights violations. I believe the only way we can actually have that country respect the human rights, it's through the civil societies. Amnesty International is doing a good job to ensure that at least they actually report these cases, which go unreported. And you see, most of these legislations come from the government. If the government is not willing to legislate on or respect the human rights, then these cases will be on the increase, because people will think it's a normal thing to do. And so it's a concern for Africans. I know there are so many Kenyans there, not only Nigerians. There are so many people from African countries who are there. And I think Africa as a continent needs to lead in agitating for that desired change. For instance, Nigeria, what stops Nigeria from stopping its citizens to go to Saudi Arabia? What stops Kenya, stopping its citizens to go there until the country legislates on proper guidelines and respects human rights? And so it's an entire topic that needs to be discussed by both the regional communities and even individual countries to see to put pressure on Saudi Arabia to actually come up with legislation or guidelines to respect human rights, especially for the foreigners in that country.
The interesting thing is when you look at the United States and how much they protect their citizens across the globe, that tells you the seriousness they take in regards to protecting their citizens, whichever country they're in. Now, Eunice, when you listen to Jose talking about we need to consider, the government of Kenya needs to consider, even the African governments, others need to consider legislations that can protect their citizens while in other countries. When we look at such legislations, what would we be talking about, Eunice?
I think in terms of the international arena, the relationship between states is governed by diplomatic arrangements, and there are conventions, the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, for example. And countries must be able to treat each country's nationalities in a way that you would want your nationalities to be treated. And this has not been happening, particularly when it comes to Saudi Arabia. Perhaps it's because of their might in terms of economic power, you know, and their oil reserves. We have an African Union, for example, in Africa. And whether they like it or not, Saudi Arabia would not manage on their own without other nationalities visiting those countries, working there and assisting them. But if we can unite on a serious note, even under the auspices of African Union, and come up with certain terms of engagement with Saudi Arabia and with our nationalities, probably issue warnings, get our nationalities out, and then negotiate with a country like that on that level, then probably they will take Africans, for example, with the seriousness which we deserve to be taken. I think there has to be concerted effort. We cannot sit back. All the relevant bodies must keep pushing, and I think this must go up to the African Union as a body to discuss and see how best we can deal with our nationalities in
I
Saudi
think,
Arabia.
Leah, to contribute to what my colleague has stated, if you look at China, what they did when in the recent past and what is going on, the Africans who are there who are being subjected to racism, you realize that most African countries kept quiet while the citizens were agitating on social media, asking their countries to take action. They never took action, and I think that's the biggest problem with African countries. And you see, citizens eventually will take the law into their hands. You've seen some Chinese citizens being mistreated in Africa because of what the African citizens are going through in their own country. So ultimately, it will lead to that. If governments do not come to the aid of their citizens, then people might take the law into their own hands. And I believe it's a conversation that the African Union and even individual countries should take seriously in ensuring that even though those countries that are subject our citizens to those treatment are superior in terms of economy, we shouldn't actually look at their support while allowing our citizens to be mistreated. There ought to be a balance in terms of respect for human rights and at the same time the kind of cooperation that my colleague has talked about. And so there is a responsibility on the government and the African Union to look into those issues and actually call those governments to stop those violations.
All right, I just want us to look at something a bit lighter, away from violations. There's a beautiful quarantine site in Tasmania, and basically this place has become one major place that's really sought after because Tasmanian volunteers are being quarantined at that particular remote facility found on the island. And well, it is a highly sought after position. Eunice, it's a difficult time, of course, but for some, I think, isolation, quarantine is working for them.
Well, what we have seen in Kenya, for example, I haven't seen that site. I wish I could see, but from looking at you and hearing what you're saying, it sounds like a good idea, In Kenya, if you're found, if neighbors can call the cops on you. We've seen them doing that. If you're late after curfew, you're quarantined, and therefore it's become a stigmatized thing. Someone talks about, hey, we're going to quarantine you. You feel stigmatized because we have seen the kind of facilities some of our people are being taken to, and they are very poor conditions. So if there's a quarantine center that, as in Tasmania, beach, lovely place, it puts you at ease. It makes the whole situation less stigmatizing, and then your mental faculties are also not so traumatized, and you can actually enjoy being on quarantine without feeling stigmatized, because you know it's a pandemic, you may be unwell or sick, so you need an environment in which you can also heal. The ones we have seen here, you know, no, they make the situation worse, and they make Kenyans, I think, more pushback. Yes.
Can you imagine, this place is sought after. Kenyans are running away while volunteers in Tasmania are actually running towards the quarantine centers. Hosea, maybe we should adopt something like this in Kenya. Perhaps have it in Mombasa, somewhere in the coast.
Yeah, I think it's an extremely good idea. Only that, you know, most Kenyans will not be able to afford such quarantine, you know, beautiful quarantine places. But I know in Kenya, most people, especially the ones who have been subjected to quarantine, have, you know, picked places where they want to go. There are hotels which have actually offered quarantine packages for people who have been declared who have been subjected to quarantine. So it depends on you know, the money bits. I think most Kenyans are struggling economically, so it is a good idea if we have reasonable quarantine places, as you suggested, Leah. In Mombasa, it's it being a tourist site, and most now that there are no tourists traveling across the world, I think it's prudent for those who can afford to be subjected to a sweet quarantine where they can be able to spend their 14 days, you know, a quarantine come holiday for that period. I think in Kenya, as my colleague has stated, it is extremely devastating. If you look at the quarantine places that the government has recommended, that is the schools, people are being put together. They do not comply with the quarantine regulations by the Ministry of Health, and I think it's a concern that the government should take into consideration, because the conditions there are not, you know, up to standard. They need to use the resources, whatever resources that they have, to ensure that people who are subjected to these quarantine places are treated humanely, are given the basic necessities, are treated as humans, not criminals. Remember, internationally, we have not heard of police mistreatment from police officers because of quarantine. It's something that came that everyone is suffering, that everyone is struggling from, and so it's anybody who has been subjected to that condition should not be treated as a criminal. They are human beings, only that they have been set aside because of suspicion that they have.
So perhaps there should be a sense of comfort.
Yes.
Not a sense of, you know what, I want to leave this place the moment I walk in.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Manuel Hosea, an advocate. Thank you for making time, and of course also Eunice Lumalas, thank you for making time today. It was great having this discussion with you guys, and I hope to have you again. Thank you for making time.
Thank you.
Well, the Morning Cafe will now take a short break. Remember, we still have the newspaper review. We want to look at the dailies and see exactly what has been happening in the country, globally, internationally, everywhere. And so don't go too far. The Morning Cafe will be back shortly. Stay tuned.
Quail. Quail.
Anorexia. ANOREXIA.
TARANTULA. Tarantula.
Mtu akikuuliza mwambie mimba yako yajificha kumbavuni.
Unajua saa nyingine ndo sijui kwa nini wanakusikiza hizi plans zako.
Hebu because I am your mother. Yaani huyo Saida akikosea yeye ni malaumu. Lakini watu wengine wote wakikosea inakuwa ni World War 3.
You need me. In this. You need me, man. Unanihitaji. You need me.
Saida. Mimi najua pale nje Luneta.
Hao ni watoto ama ni kokoto?
Kama Saida, si
Uchovu wa fikra, mwili, akili.
Wazena, usichezee thamani yangu, wasikia? Makuzi yangu lazima raundi hii utalipa.
Kila baada ya miaka 5 tunawachagua kwa kazi zao za ofisini, tunawafahamu. Lakini je, unajua maisha yao zaidi ya ofisi?
Naomba Mungu kwamba ndio kabla hajaniokoa nikuwe bishop anipatie mpaka ile kipawa ile ya kuona ile ya ukweli, si ile vitu ambayo kinanganga wanafanya hapa ya ukora.
Milima na mabonde tutavuka, kaunti zote 47 na ikibidi nje ya nchi tutafika, ili mradi kuhakikisha kuwa umewafahamu.
Ile ningetaka kusema ni kwamba that vile tumelelewa tukiwa ndani ya biashara. Kwa hivyo biashara ilikuwa ndani yangu. Hii maneno ya kuandikwa ilikuwa tu formality kidogo upate laini.
Wale waliopo na wale waliokuwepo wote kwa mpigo tutawapata. Nitabisha, wakifungua nitaingia, kisha nitakupeleka kwa utaratibu katika safari yao ya maisha.
Kumbushwa nioe 1992.
Nani alikukumbusha?
Ni mama alikuwa anatukasia sana, anasema lazima vijana muoe.
Hayo yote utayapokea katika kipindi Mfahamu Kiongozi, nami Elizabeth Mutuku, kila siku ya Jumatano saa 2 kamili.
This May on TV47, we are giving you more reason to stay at home.
You are the chosen one. Because I am your mother.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Same-sex attraction isn't completely gone because
my root is from God.
Oh, Pete. Lazima raundi hii utalipa.
You'll see some kind of like a smokish thing.
Hey man, don't forget about the monkeys.
Hao ni watoto ama ni kokoto?
Kama Saida, si shut up.
Where
are we?
Right here on TV47, the home of untold stories. The coronavirus has negatively affected the business environment not only in Kenya but also globally. We at TV47 are in support of measures taken by the government of Kenya to safeguard the public and keep livelihoods going. In this regard, we wish to appreciate the business entities that are resilient and putting on the Kenyan spirit to sustain their businesses. We wish to support your business and the measures taken to be at the forefront of championing COVID-19 awareness by giving you free advertising in our 24-hour nationwide TV station. You can advertise your business and mention measures your company is taking to mitigate the spread of the virus. This initiative is geared towards providing a platform for continuous interaction with your clients and visibility of your business. To be eligible for this free advertising on TV47, please visit www.tv47.co.ke/advertiser and fill the following details. For more inquiries, please email ads@tv47.co.ke or simply call us on 0748 205 604.
levelpesa.com. Have you closed your business operations due to the corona pandemic? Are you unable to travel to and from the workplace? Due to the coronavirus pandemic, LevelPesa is opening its online portal free of charge to everyone wishing to sell products and services online. Simply register at levelpesa.com, take a photo of your goods or service, describe it and start selling at no charge. Register today to get your e-commerce app for free.
Sarma Enterprises Limited, we are your trusted and reliable supplier of quality timber products, construction material suppliers, which are river sand, ballast, building stones. Visit our website on www.sarma.co.ke. Sarma Enterprises Limited, quality materials for quality structures.
Mengi yamesemwa kuhusu jinsi virusi hivi vya korona vinavyosambaa na kuzuiliwa. Hata hivyo, sio yote unayasikia ni ukweli. Uongo umewafanya watu wengi kuishi kwa woga kote ulimwenguni. Nimekutana na watoto wengi wakisema kuwa mbu, yani mosquito, husaidia kusambaza virusi hivi. Huo si ukweli. COVID-19 husambazwa na hewa. Na hii hufanyika wakati mtu aliyepata virusi hivi hukohoa na chembe-chembe za mate usafiri hadi kwa mtu mwingine. Ni aina fulani ya mbu ndio huleta ugonjwa wa malaria. Ni ukweli kwamba ukipata chanjo ya pneumonia itakuzuia kupata virusi hivi? La hasha. Hivi virusi ni vipya. Wataalamu na madaktari wanajizatiti vilivyo kuvumbua chanjo mpya ili kukabiliana na virusi hivi. Njia ambayo ni mwafaka na rahisi kupunguza kuenea kwa ugonjwa huu wa corona au COVID-19 ni kunawa mikono yako kwa kutumia sabuni na kujiepusha na vikundi au umati. Kumbuka kuwa mimi na wewe tunaweza kufanya mabadiliko makubwa.
Since late last year, the coronavirus COVID-19 has emerged as a serious healthcare threat. This is an infection that has gone global and no one has been spared. The government, through the Ministry of Health, has put in measures to keep Kenyans safe against COVID-19, which is currently rampant around the world, with new confirmed infections and death cases daily. Such sanitization and screening of visitors at this border post and across every entry point in the country is very vital in preventing the spread of the disease in the country.
I'm very happy about the screenings that are going on in Tanzania and Kenya. I think it's very proactive that you're thinking about stopping it at the border so that it does not spread.
It is scary that a single cough here can lead to an outbreak of epic proportions. In order to prevent that, the government has instituted measures to keep Kenyans safe.
The facility has all the equipments you need from handling a basic patient up to ICU setting.
However, you also have a role to play in preventing spread of infections.
Citizen responsibility is the key to the success of this initiative and these measures. Let's all do what we have to do individually. And this is how we are going to defeat this disease.
It's just our general hygiene, okay? And that now means at workplaces, we should ensure that our work surfaces are clean.
Always ensure that nimefanya proper sanitation ya mikono. Every time na board matatu, lazima ni sanitize mikono.
We have faced many severe challenges as a nation, and we have always found a way to rise above them. COVID-19 is no different, and we'll overcome the pandemic. Stop coronavirus. Follow all directives from the Ministry of Health. Wash your hands.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is the Morning Cafe with me, Liangare. Before we took a short break, just looking at what is happening locally, internationally and regionally. Quite an insightful discussion there with my guests. Right now, I want us to look at what is happening in the dailies. We'll start with the Daily Nation. Of course, as you can see on the front page, talking about how Eastleigh went south. Well, there has been concern about how Kenyans are behaving towards the containment measures that have been directed and given by the government. Of course, there's been a feeling by the government that Kenyans may not be taking serious the whole pandemic and, of course, the impact it has on the country. This particular story, it is in page 5, and let's just take a look at what the story is talking about. Talking about old habits dying hard in Eastleigh as religious practices on fasting month spread the virus. Indeed, according to this story, and of course what you may already know, this is a month of fasting for most of the Muslim faithfuls, and it is containment measures, especially during the time when they break the fast. And of course, this story is just talking a little bit about the culture of socialization and of course also the whole idea of communal gatherings. And Kenyans are being urged again, you know, to observe the containment measures. This story goes ahead to talk about the fact that this comes after 47 people, including 32 from Mombasa and 11 from Nairobi, tested positive for the virus, to bring the national caseload to 582. Guys, this number is not going down, it is going up. So it's time Kenyans indeed take serious the containment measures that the government has given to all of us here in the country. And just looking at another story here in page 2, talking about Ruto Raila 2022 warships to IEBC. The story here talking about fresh details having emerged that the President Uhuru Kenyatta and Orange Democratic Movement leader Raila Odinga, their plot to frustrate Deputy President William Ruto's 2022 presidential bid. Of course, there has been emerging wrangles that have been very evident to all of us who are keen on matters, current affairs in the political scene. And this story talking about the fact that with the President Uhuru Kenyatta battling to fully control the ruling party, that's the Jubilee Party, he has seemed to moot a 2022 coalition with ODM as well as Baringo Senator Gideon Moi. This is something that is happening right now. Of course, it will be interesting to see the allies, the realignment of certain personalities within the Jubilee coalition. Of course, also ODM being part of it. Well, let's just keep our eyes on this story. And this is one of the stories that us TV47 will be keeping abreast on. And then moving on to page 3, still on the Daily Nation today. Quite an interesting story, also very sad for people who love to tour countries, people who also work in some of the famous sites. Maybe they rely on those jobs to get money, and this is a very sad situation where we're seeing wild animals ruling the deserted Mara as the coronavirus keeps visitors away. This story basically telling us a little bit about what has been happening at the Mara. There has been a situation where tourists have literally kept away from the Mara. And not just tourists, but definitely even people who like to visit, just Kenyans across the country. This story talking about regular days. The Narok Sikinani Road is a busy, thorough affair, but as it is right now, the Mara Game Reserve has seemed to be deserted. Well, every year the Maasai Mara is known for its large population, but according to this story, you will find that lions, leopards and cheetahs and of course elephants and millions of herbivores are said to be roaming around the Mara in places where originally you would be finding human beings walking. And if you look again at this story, just talking about the fact that 86 kilometers stretch is almost devoid of traffic, meaning there's no more people, and not a single tourist has visited the Mara in more than 60 days. That's very much of concern, talking about what is happening in the tourism industry and the impact that the COVID-19 has on the tourism industry. And just moving on a little bit more, looking at this story in page 8, still in the Daily Nation, if I can just move that forward, I think it should be in the People Daily. But just looking also at page 6, we have another story there, Porous Borders, the new COVID-19 frontiers. This story talking about the fact that more than 10 COVID-19 cases are recorded in Kenya in the past 7 days and have been traced to Somalia and Tanzania. And just looking briefly at the People Daily on the front page, you see that Y State has sealed off Eastleigh Old Town. Again, we know that the COVID-19 cases are on the rise in the country, and it's a sad affair, and Kenyans are being urged to make sure that they do observe the containment measures. Of course, page 8, if you can just finally wind up the newspaper review today, governors are calling for border closures to combat COVID-19. Again, this is a matter of concern. It's in all the dailies today. Kenyans being urged to observe the containment measures, Kenyans being reminded to social distance, to make sure that they wear masks, that they observe some sense of social distancing wherever they're going. Talking about Kenyans in the streets, traders who are not wearing masks, they're still, talking very closely and not observing social distancing measures. This story in page 8 of the People Daily. And at this moment, I just want to wind up the newspaper review and take us right into an inspirational video just to encourage you this morning, to pump you up so that you can go about your day with some sense of inspiration. Take a look.
When I look at people, I always ask the question, I say, man, tell me what Nike stands for. They said, oh, Inc., that's easy, just do it. I said, tell me what Adidas stands for. Oh, Inc., that's easy, man, impossible is nothing. I said, now tell me what you stand for. When people look at you, do they think excuses? When people look at you, do they think victory? When people look at you, do they think that's a person that's gonna give me everything they got, not on some days, but on every day, and it's not gonna be predicated upon if I feel like it, because I think we all know if we only worked on the days when we felt like it, none of us would get much accomplished. I'm talking about the real level of commitment. Not the commitment that falls in line if everything goes right. I'm speaking of the commitment that says, I am going to stay true to what I said I would do long after the mood that I've set it in has left.
See, most people, ladies and gentlemen, are stoppable. Most people, all you have to do is tell them no. All you have to do is make it inconvenient for them. All you have to do is make it difficult for them, and they'll stop. See, when you go to get your goal, don't think that all you have to do is think positive and everything's going to work out okie dokie for you. When you go to get your goal, you are sending a telegram to Murphy's Law to visit you personally.
You thought you was just gonna have a dream and a goal, and you was just gonna wake up and just walk into the sunset. You're like, dream, boom. It don't work like that. You have a dream, and then life punks you. Life punks you and say, do you really want this? You gonna lose friends. Do you really want this? Do you really want this? Cousins gonna abandon you. People that you used to be like this with don't think you bougie, don't want to deal with you. It's a part of it, but I paid too much. If I was gonna quit, I would have quit in the abandoned building when I wanted to commit suicide and take my life. I should have quit when I heard my voice say, your mama don't want you, your daddy don't want you, take your life. I got through that, so why I'm gonna quit over an F on a grade? Come on. And so I'm telling y'all, you have come too far to quit now. You have invested too much to quit now. You have lost too much to quit now. Don't cry about it. Don't whine about it. Get a reward for your pain. And so by being committed to everything that I started, I finished it. It built a certain type of spirit. It built a certain type of mentality. It built a certain type of individual. And so now I couldn't quit even if I wanted to. I couldn't stop even if I wanted to. I had too much sweat equity in my life and everything that I was doing.
You're too close to quit now. You gotta take another lap. You gotta take another lap, because you never know. This might be the one. You can't stop because you're tired. You can't stop because you got your feelings hurt. You gotta take another lap. Keep walking, keep walking, keep walking. You're gonna make it. You're gonna do it. You got an unstoppable fire. Come on, take another lap. Don't you stop. Don't stop walking.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is the Morning Cafe with me, Leangari. And this is the segment where we get to find out everything about lifestyle issues, whether it's fashion, whether it's nutrition like today, and many other issues. Kefa Nanyumba, a consultant nutritionist, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Kefa, I know right now, during the COVID-19 pandemic, nutrition is really big. What are some of the concerns you've seen being raised as far as nutrition is concerned and the impact that COVID-19 has on nutrition?
Okay, now nutrition is actually very, very important this time because it actually tends to boost our immunity, and you know that our immunity is a defense force. And this is actually very, very important, especially for people who are actually infected by COVID-19. So people want to know, which foods can actually assist them to boost their immunity. And by doing this, of course, they'll be able to fight this crisis. Yeah.
When we look at children and the impact that this has on children, of course we know that there's low income for most of the households because some of them have lost jobs, some of them perhaps their salaries have been reduced. But when we look at affordable nutrition for children during the pandemic, what will be the ideal kind of nutrition that's affordable for a common one in his household?
Okay, there are a number of foods that are actually recommended for adults and children as well. So for example, for breakfast, some of the good foods that they're actually supposed to take include the traditional foods like the sweet potatoes, the arrowroots. Unfortunately, parents are actually giving children unhealthy foods, the snacks, and this is actually affecting our children because in future these are the kind of children who will actually end up getting lifestyle diseases as adults.
When you talk about foods that the snacks that like you mentioned that are being given to children, what are we talking about?
Okay, when you talk about the term snacks, many people think of biscuits and sweets and all that. But a snack is just anything you take in between your meals, and some of the healthy snacks that we can recommend include yogurt, for example, peanuts, boiled maize, and fruits, of course. So those are the good snacks that I would actually recommend.
And when you look at, like what you've mentioned, some of the lifestyle diseases that children can actually get because of being fed foods that are not good, foods that are not nutritious in this case. What are some of the lifestyle diseases that we're looking at that may be affecting children at this time and even before COVID?
Okay, we know that lifestyle diseases have actually increased, and some of these conditions are affecting children as well. So for example, we have conditions like high cholesterol levels that actually predisposes people to conditions like heart attack and stroke. We are actually seeing children getting some of these conditions. Of course, we're also seeing children getting conditions like asthma, allergies. They're also becoming very common. And all this is happening because of the type of foods that children actually are being given. But this can be addressed if parents would be able to get the knowledge they need so that they can be able to know the good foods for their children.
And looking at some of the lifestyle diseases that you've talked about, of course, a parent out there asking, so how do I reverse this impact on the foods that I've been feeding my children that are not nutritious and now they have lifestyle diseases? So how do you reverse it? Where does a parent begin?
Okay, it actually all starts with a very simple understanding of our lifestyle. And what we need to do is to embrace lifestyle change. And I keep on saying that lifestyle change is like a tea bag. If you want to know the strength of a tea bag, you need to put it in hot water. Many people actually wait until they get into hot water before they embrace lifestyle change. And our lifestyle comprises of many components. One of them is actually good nutrition. We have issues to do with exercise. Of course, we have stress management. Like now, many people are experiencing stress and anxiety. And of course, we also have rest. So it all actually starts by understanding why we need to change lifestyle, and of course, addressing the components that I've actually talked about: good nutrition, exercise, stress management, rest, all those factors.
And even when you talk, when you talk about exercise, the first thing you imagine, of course, it's the exercise that most of the adults do. Yeah. But is there exercise that parents can engage their children in, especially during this time, considering that many of them are just like, I've visited some of my friends, and their kids are confined within the compound. They can't go and hang out with other children. And you're talking about exercise. So what kind of exercise can they do just within the compound or where they live?
Children like enjoyable forms of exercise. Like we know cycling is actually a very good form of exercise for children because it's enjoyable. Some of them like skipping. So when you talk about exercise, many people think that it has to be complicated. It has to be something simple, and the key word is the consistency. Simple forms of exercise, because the objective is for us to actually increase the energy expenditure, so that we don't get excessive accumulation of calories. We know that increases the risk of obesity, and obesity is actually becoming common among children, and that is what is predisposing them to conditions that we've actually talked about, the lifestyle diseases. Yeah.
Okay, and just before we move away from children, Kefa, what will be the ideal balanced diet for a child in this time?
When you talk about a balanced diet, the most important thing we want to focus on is actually getting the right balance of the nutrients. And how do you know that you have the right balance of nutrients? Is by observing what you call the cravings. Craving is actually the way our body cries for nutrients. So when you start getting craving, then you need to be concerned that you are lacking certain nutrients. So what are some of the ways you can use to ensure that we have a balanced diet? It's actually very simple. You just need to ensure that when you're taking the meals, you have all the 3 food groups. You need the vegetables, you need the proteins, and you need the starches. Unfortunately, the way our people take food is actually not the right way, because at times we take the right foods, but the combination is not right. For example, at times you find people taking, rice and potatoes and cabbage. They don't take proteins, and it's playing a major challenge. Actually, it's also very, very common even during weaning. For small children at 6 months and all that, whereby parents don't give children the right foods in terms of the food groups, and because of that, most children are actually suffering from what you call micronutrient deficiencies. When you talk about vegetables, for example, there are variety of the vegetables, and we focus more on the green leafy vegetables, the traditional vegetables. They're actually very good. And of course, we have other vegetables like spinach, cabbage, etc. Those vegetables are actually good. Now, let's talk about proteins. Proteins are also very, very important. We know that children need more proteins because proteins actually tend to promote what you call growth and development. We have different types of proteins. We have what you call the plant proteins and the animal proteins. Unfortunately, many people focus more on the animal proteins and not the plant proteins. But at times, you tend to understand them because of issues to do with acidity and heartburn. The digestive disorders. They're really increasing nowadays, and many people are staying away from the plant proteins. Then we have the starches. We have what you call the simple starches and the complex starches. Simple starches are the starches that don't have fiber, and many people are going for simple starches. For example, instead of taking brown bread, most people are taking white bread, and because of that, people are also getting digestive disorders because of lack of fiber. But we need to make sure that we include starches as part of our food, and some of the good starches, for example, for children and of course for adults as well, include rice is very good. We have the sweet potatoes, the arrowroots. We can take chapati, which is brown. We can take ugari. It is depending on where we come from, because we all know that there are common foods that we are supposed to take from our communities, and our body tends to understand the foods from our communities, and that is why we advise people to make sure that they stick to the foods that actually grow in their communities.
Okay, fantastic. So that makes it even more affordable for them, because these are foods that are readily available and they're affordable as well. But when we look at the adults, because now we've just talked about children, what is the ideal nutrition? The direction they should take with nutrition right now, especially during the pandemic, considering, like I mentioned, some of them have lost jobs, some of them have gotten, salary cuts. So within something that is affordable for them, what will be that ideal diet that they can pursue right now for the adults?
This circumstance is actually making people to undergo what you call the stress and anxiety. And this actually tends to increase the demand for oxygen, nutrients, and energy, of course. And therefore, good nutrition at this point actually plays a very important role. But it's also important for our viewers to understand, what is a nutrition. Nutrition is simply the start of the nutrients in the foods, how our body makes use of those nutrients, and the connection between our food intake, our healthy status, and disease. Now, for us to ensure that we are getting the right nutrition during this point, there's one thing we need to do. Number one, we cannot afford to skip our meals. And that's actually a challenge with most people. There are people take, for example, 1 meal per day. And at times, it's because they're not able to take 3 meals because of a slow rate of metabolism. So don't skip your meals. And when you're taking your meals, as I said, just like children, we need to make sure that we take a balanced diet. You must have vegetables, you must have proteins, you must have starches. And make sure that you interchange your foods. Foods have different colors. And one of the easiest ways of ensuring that we are getting all the nutrients you need is by making sure that we take foods based on their colors. Interchange those colors. Make sure that your food actually comprises of at least 3 colors when you're taking your food. That's one of the simple ways you can make sure that we are getting the nutrients that we need at this point. And the good part is for those of us who are not infected, we are doing this not because we are sick, but because we want to prevent disease. Because we have to be proactive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, before we even move away from at least the people who have not tested positive and whatnot, you've talked about stress levels, you've talked about anxiety, natural remedies. Some people don't want to take medicine for these things. Are there natural remedies for taking down anxiety or dealing with depression, other than medication?
Now,
in terms of nutrition?
In terms of nutrition. Now, you need to understand that when we are stressed, as I said, there's usually increased need for oxygen, for nutrients, and of course for energy. Very important. And if you can be able to address those 3 demands, our body should be able to assist us to handle stress. In any case, what is stress? Stress is the way the body actually tries to create, a state of balance in the body. We call it actually homeostasis. And what we need to do is to ensure that we assist our body to assist us. How do we do that? By first and foremost ensuring that we have the right nutrients at this point. You know that a nutrient like iron is actually very important. That's what it transports oxygen. And as I said, our oxygen demand increases when we are stressed. So we need to make sure that at this point we're increasing foods that are actually rich in terms of iron. And we are talking of foods like a liver, very good for iron, spinach, brown porridge, etc. Number 2, we also need to address the issue of energy. When we are stressed, our energy requirements usually increase. Meaning, we need to make sure that we don't skip starches. I know there are many people who are trying to lose weight, and some of them are actually adopting the wrong ways of doing that. The shortcuts, the detox programs. And by doing that, they're actually affecting their energy levels. So we need to make sure that we meet our energy requirements by ensuring that we don't avoid starch as part of our meals. And of course, the other issue is the issue of the nutrients. We need to make sure that we are getting the right balance of the nutrients. But having said that, we also know that there are certain habits that tend to make stress worse. For example, some people have a tendency of taking a lot of coffee.
And by the way, most people believe coffee is good.
Yes.
Of course, someone who's come as early as myself, I want to stay awake, especially demanding job like mine, getting home late, coming to work early. And the first thing I think of is I need a cup of coffee so that I can stay awake.
But do you know why people get cravings for coffee? It's because of a slow rate of metabolism. And therefore, if we can be able to address our metabolism, which is the rate at which the body is functioning, we would actually not crave for the coffee. But I have to actually say this, that especially for people who are taking calcium supplements, you need to make sure that you cut down your coffee intake, because coffee tends to affect calcium absorption. And of course, if you are trying to address the issue of cravings, at times you might need assistance. You need to seek assistance from a nutritionist so that you can be able to address craving. In any case, you do know why people take unhealthy foods? Because of cravings. And therefore, as professionals, what we address is the cravings. If you come to see me and I tell you to reduce coffee or reduce fast foods or avoid fast foods, you'll not be able to do it. I need to address the root cause. Why? Because most of these cravings actually come because of nutrient imbalances. And that's when people come to see us, we are usually concerned about your dietary history. In fact, I take 1.5 hours to 2 hours attending one patient. But out of the 2 hours, in fact, I take a lot of time trying to understand your dietary history. In fact, they usually say that if you want to cut down a tree using 1 hour, what you need to do is you need to take 45 minutes to sharpen the axe and 15 minutes to cut it. And that's exactly what we do. And that is why me telling someone, reduce coffee, do this and all that, I know at times it doesn't work because we are not assisting them to address the root cause. And that's what we are supposed to do as professionals. That's what we usually do.
So what's the way to address the root cause for someone who is a coffee addict?
It depends on the kind of questions we ask ourselves. If you ask ourselves the right questions, we get the right answers. Unfortunately, many people ask themselves the wrong questions. For example, people ask, how can I reduce my coffee intake? That's the wrong question. The question is supposed to be, why am I taking a lot of coffee? Why do I have coffee cravings? And that will take us to your slow rate of metabolism. Then you also need to ask ourselves, why do I have a slow rate of metabolism? It could be because of a number of factors. One of them would be iron deficiency, for example. The other one would be, maybe you have iron deficiency. We know that iodine deficiency. We know that iodine is a very, very important nutrient that boosts our immunity, our metabolism rate. And that is why everybody gets it through salt. Maybe some people have what you call vitamin B12 deficiency. And this is like the people who have a condition we call hypothyroidism. And such people will have we actually have a slow rate of metabolism. So once we address some of these concerns, your metabolism will improve and your cravings will not be there. That is called addressing the root cause. Unfortunately, many people work on the smoke instead of the fire.
All right.
Yeah.
So moving away from that, when we look at, of course, people, some of them had tested positive and then they have recovered. You've heard of the government talking about number of people recovering on a daily basis. There's always that number.
Which is good news.
Very good news.
Good news, yeah.
So for someone who has recovered, what nutrition or nutritional food can they get for themselves, or that balanced diet that they need, especially having gone through such a traumatic experience shocking their body because of the virus, and then now they've come out. And I'm sure you must have really considered how you can assist such people. What have you been doing for them?
Okay, now such people actually need, good nutrition, of course, among other factors. But as I said, when you talk about nutrition, the focus is on ensuring that you are getting the right nutrients. And there are three important questions that we need to answer for us to say that our diet is good. Number one is, what are they taking? Very important, the types of food they're taking. Number two is, how are they taking their foods? Because as I said, at times you can take the right foods, but the wrong way. And by the end of the day, we don't benefit. And next is, when are they taking their foods? So if they can be able to answer those questions as they actually take their meals, then they can be assured of getting the right balance of the nutrients. They need to cut it down, for example, sugary foods and fatty foods and salty foods, because these are the foods that affect our immunity. Number two, they need to make sure that, so for example, when they are taking their food, they observe the right combination. At times, people want to take everything. For example, people want to take, 3, 4, 5 types of, proteins per sitting. Somebody's taking beef and chicken, and rice, ugari, and chapati. You see, cooked vegetables, fruit salad. And those are the kind of people end up getting digestive disorders. And when they get digestive disorders, of course, the issue of micronutrient deficiencies arise, and because of that, of course, the immunity becomes compromised. And of course, when such people get reinfected with COVID-19, the body will not be able to fight. So we need to address those issues around nutrition. Unfortunately, the song has been the right and the wrong foods. I think at this point, we should be beyond that. Let's address how to take our foods, when to take our foods and all that. But apart from that, they also need to start introducing exercise. The target is supposed to be at least 10,000 steps per day. Because that's what we need to count ourselves active. And they can engage in simple forms of exercise. Right now, I know we are actually told to stay at home, which is very important. Meaning, people need to, to start engaging in simple forms of exerise. Jogging on the same spot. You can actually do brisk walking on the same spot. You can skip. If your weight is not too much, again, we don't want to tell people we're above 100 kgs and all that to skip because of the dangers of affecting the joints and all that. So simple forms of exercise that are sustainable. The most important part is the sustainable. But apart from the food and the exercise, we also need water. It's also very important. You'll be surprised that many people don't take water. And I don't blame them. Because there are many reasons to why people don't take water. Some of them include, the taste of water. The people tell you that they don't like the taste of water. And that's why they go for flavored water from the supermarket, which might not be as good as... Is
flavored water equally good?
It might not, it's actually not good as compared to pure water because, it tends to contain some calories, excess calories compared to pure water. Yeah. So most people go for such water because of the taste of the water. But as professionals, we're able to address that. Because as I said, our focus is actually to work on the root cause. The people don't remember to take water, and I cannot blame them.
How many glasses of water should you take in a day?
That's a very good question. I should ask that question, and many people seem to have the answer. Everybody will tell you that it's 2 liters, which is like 8 glasses, not 8 liters. I know the other people take a lot of water, and that, of course, tends to affect them without knowing. So we are supposed to take 2 liters, which is like 8 glasses. But the other important question is actually how many glasses do we take? Because at times we know what you're supposed to do, but you don't do it. And what makes the
so how many
difference
glasses
is not what we know,
take
but what we do with what you know. Yeah. So we're supposed to take average 8 glasses. 6 to 8 not bad. 6 to 8, that is okay. But again, something very important, depends on our body weight. Because what is in the books is usually average. Books will always give us average, and that's why people cannot read books and improve. Books have what you call the guidelines. It's us professionals to contextualize the information in the books so that it actually fits or so that it can actually be able to address the specific issues presented by our patients.
All right.
Unfortunately, many people go to internet.
Okay.
And they're not getting it right.
Thank you, Kefa.
Yeah, thank you
for so much information on nutrition and how we can take care of ourselves during this pandemic, and of course for those people who had tested positive but now have recovered. Thank you for making time, Kefa.
Thank you so much.
A consultant nutritionist, Kefa Nanyumba, here talking to us about nutrition during the pandemic, and of course also for those people who had tested positive for the COVID-19 and now have been recovered. Thank you so much, Kefa. And this has been the Morning Cafe. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in. Indeed, it's always a pleasure to have you join us and engaging us. Of course, because we have run out of time, I may not be able to sample all your comments or any of them. Sadly, I'm sorry. But remember, the conversation does not end here. Morning Cafe will be back tomorrow, same time, same place at 7 a.m. Thank you for watching. My name is Leangari. Until tomorrow, same time, same place. Have a lovely day.